ETH cautiously bullish, point to look out for, but big support from the weekly. I think that bouncing down into this weekly is fine. What I don't want to see is losing this block, losing the EMA. As the EMA rises up, price comes into overbought. And if this faces correction, I really don't want to see it coming below the bottom of this. I want to see it stay bouncing off this weekly. I don't want to see it like retest and head down. Anything in this area is a no for me. Anything that stays up here is fine. I think we're headed to all-time highs unless this is a complacency shoulder. This is a very strong support, but I don't want to revisit it. For now, any red within the next week or two, interested to buy it. Not interested to long necessarily, but just interested to buy spot. ETH BTC, I think this trend is accelerating. We're just we're going parabolic basically, and I think that's just going to finish out this cup, head toward this. Pretty confident. I don't know that there's a good like weekly point to be opening along or anything like that. You might have to drop down like lower level to look for that, but this isn't a bad spot if we can hit there again. It's actually not at a bad spot right now. Below that you'd be looking around here, but just playing the weeklies, you know, overall pretty good macro, pretty hard to beat something that's going parabolic upward. ADA taking this weekly range looks great. Holding above any of this sort of area looks great. Tentative resistance around here, but so far, you know, even if you come back down, it would be good to bounce off of that. You don't want to come down and like stay here. That would be a pretty bad look. You basically have a double bottom, so it's good that it's riding off of that. This weekly is definitely going to get a higher body close and has plenty of room to move to be an oversold. So staying above this sort of wick and this candle top would be awesome, but it doesn't look like it's going to do that. Probably off of this much of a bounce. You will get some sell-off. That's fine as long as, you know, it's pretty mild. If it just wicks down and continues on, there's probably no way ADA doesn't hit some new highs. It's just a question of how fast. This is your like obvious giga support, so you don't want to be going anywhere down here again. That's just completely off limits, like dead zone. And that's of course this thick line right here. That's what you have to hold no matter what. And consolidating above that was great. Losing it, not so hot, but bouncing directly above it after failing can be a good sign. Even if we consolidate here, pretty good sign. Just don't want to be down here. Definitely don't want to be down here. BNB looks not great. It's just kind of like, it's just kind of going down. One of the few things that didn't double bottom, it got a lower low. It's printed just nothing but lower high, lower low. So it doesn't look great. Probably wouldn't want to play it anywhere in this yellow area. It's coming up on a sort of a tentative resistance point. So if it's going to make a lower high, it could do it either here or here and continue to a lower low. So it's very high risk. The RSI is not impressive in any way. It's just been going down with it, and it's only hovering around the middle. It's under the EMA. Doesn't look great. Would not want to play it. It could very well rocket off like ADA has, but why speculate on that when you can simply not? XRP looks pretty decent. Nice week springing off of this support, essentially giving you a double bottom. XRP always has a weird chart, so it doesn't look too fantastic. But this level, it didn't even want to come back down to. It sprung off the top of it, which is nice. It cut through this like it was nothing. And right now it's looking to hold sort of this top level here for a secondary visit. If it can hold this and the EMA at the same time while moving to the top half of the RSI, it's got plenty of room to move before it's overbought, and I would expect this area to be its real test, which is the only place that we've seen previous price action before the huge China issue. So probably somewhere between the top of this and this, this is going to be your real area of test, in my opinion, unless this rejects back down toward this range, which would be very negative for it. So expecting not that you won't have any fight at all, but that ultimately this will be the point where you have your biggest struggle. Doge, ETH, nice doji into bullish engulfing. Looks pretty okay. Taking this block would be excellent. There's not a lot of price action between these blocks. There's a lot of wicks, but there's not a lot of bodies. So closing above this line, I think you probably won't see too much body action here. Again, you probably just sort of teleport back to this range. And if that happens, we'll be on the upswing again, and likely we're going to make a new body high. And so that's probably looking pretty good for now. As long as it holds this EMA and stays in the support block and doesn't start falling back down toward this, I feel pretty good about it. It is in the top half of the RSI as well. So it has a lot of potential, and it's toward a point where there's a very low downside risk as long as you set your evacuation point sort of toward the bottom of this block. You don't have a lot to lose, but you've got a lot to gain. So this is not a bad play, although should consider that the macro is a downtrend right now, so there is the chance that you can just kind of reject off of this resistance point and continue downward. But if that's the case, you can just exit at the bottom of this resistance block and not have too much of a loss on your books. DOT is interesting. This red zone is a daily resistance. It doesn't quite line up on the weekly, but I think the weekly resistance up here is a bit too high to expect nothing en route to it. I think you're going to see some kind of resistance, some kind of play in this daily red block. As far as the weekly goes, lots of interaction down here and not so much in the yellow. Really didn't spend any time here, sort of teleported through it. Now stalling out at the weekly for the bottom, for the body, and stalling out at the daily resistance for the wick. So we are still under the EMA. We are still in the bottom half of the RSI. It is possible that this just turns down after this huge run up and continues to be in a downtrend, which, it's not impossible that this is the bigger picture for DOT. But for now, what I would want to see is this weekly being taken, and that would give us a chance to move the RSI upward and move the EMA around in a different direction. And it would actually be the first time that the EMA was really looking bullish outside of this nice pump here. Basically, this section is the only time the EMA really looked good. So DOT actually doesn't look very good against ETH, but there is a chance that this is a legitimate reversal, and I would be interested in playing this line, not really interested in playing this yellow area that doesn't have much action in it at all. The Sol, you're in price exploration. This was essentially one big range. You had potential for a resistance here that really did nothing. So you can go down to the daily and look for some kind of support, some kind of resistance to be forming. But for now, the nearest thing we have on a high time frame is this support block, which is like 30% down from where we are now. So it's unlikely that it's going to be that legitimate of a support block. We we don't really have a lot of history for the EMA or the RSI to matter too much. And if this is going to continue to bull, the RSI won't matter at all. The EMA might be left like very far in the dust. So we don't really know what's going to happen. If this is some crazy fake out, there's really not much in the terms of an early warning system. So I think this is something that you have to buy expecting to hold it for the future. It's a project you just have to believe in the fundamentals of, because as far as technical analysis is concerned, there's no longer anything to go off of. So you're going to have to wait at least a few weeks before there are technicals, and by then it will have either crashed or taken off. I really don't see it just making a new all-time high and then consolidating. Probably not going to happen like that. So this is just going to be a speculative play on either side, whether you're short or long. Uni, I don't like it. It's just a macro downtrend and a range, and that range is really doing nothing. You have a speculative level through the middle. If you can see that line, it's a little bit difficult because it's where the current price action is, but there's a chance that we're forming a support here, which could show a move up, but there's no reason to speculate on that. You might as well let it play out. There's no real reason to be buying below this line. Once this line confirms as a support, once you get a breakout, that would also put you in a position to flip the EMA and to move the RSI toward the top half, which would be a good confluence of events to kind of change bias to bullish. But unless that happens, being locked in this range means really nothing. It's not something that I would want to play, especially being toward the middle of it and not like toward the bottom. It's not a place I would want to buy. Being toward the top of it, I wouldn't necessarily want to short because the entire market is moving in an upward direction, and it's unlikely that uni would be left behind. But if it continues to underperform ETH, then the trend will probably break down. Right now is not the time to be getting into this. And this is, as I said, it could just be doing something like this. And I think it was dots looked a little similar, where you have a point of control right now that could play out very, very poorly for people trying to speculate on this before it takes any key levels. So really want to see this taken at a minimum. If you want to be super responsible, then you'd want the complete reversal confirmation up here above the 0.01. But it's not something to be speculating on. Bitcoin Cash, it's garbage. It's absolutely dog shit. So this line is the wicks. You can see this line is more of the candle bodies, just playing around a little bit with these earlier. Of course, if you want to draw a legitimate line, this would be a more legitimate line. But either way, it's straight down. There's really nothing to review here. There's no supports. There's no real outliers other than people doing liquidity hunts. All you can really put on this is a resistance, and it's tapped to that and peeling away from it now. There's no support to speak of other than this. So I mean, there's it really speaks for itself. There's nothing here. It's straight down. I mean, this would be the most brainless short in the world if not for this sort of liquidity hunt where they pump it like over 100% in a couple weeks, and then just like obviously they're going to dump all of that and then pump it again another like 50-70%. Otherwise, this would be like the easiest short in the world, but because of the liquidity hunts, you can't really short this more than like a 2x or 1.5x. So it's pretty just useless for everything. It's not even useful for shorting. Link, man, it's trying to put in a bottom. I think you have a few wicks testing this sort of interim resistance level, and no real sign that it's going to break out anytime soon. You're well under the EMA. You're on dog shit RSI. Like you're not close enough to oversold to really be thinking about a pump. You never even hit oversold when you got to this maybe bottom event. And for now, it's not even able to flip like this local resistance. So at a very minimum, I'd say you want to take this, and even so, even taking that with a body with these wicks stalling out here, I don't think that's a very safe play. I think what you'd really want to see is close above this little level. And if you are able to do that, then you can start thinking about flipping that EMA and perhaps moving above the 50 RSI. But for now, it's not really playing out too well. So I think the smart move about this is to forget it until this level is reclaimed. Forget a little bit of those profits. And if you want to short, this is like the perfect place to short because you're just under the weekly resistance. But it's dangerous. The link has very rabid following, despite the fact that it's like down only this whole time against ETH. I don't know. It's difficult to want to fade link even after it's kind of fallen out of favor because its history is so strong that I mean, it's been about a year though, like pretty much a year of straight down against ETH. So people might just be over it. I would say that if this level falls, I mean, this is like your last ditch effort. There's really nothing much below it that's going to catch it. So if this level falls, you're going to be able to teleport down quite a bit, and so you might as well just wait and see if that happens. And so if this were to fail, I would be happy to short it, and if this were to succeed on the upside, I would be happy to go long on that. But for now, it's just in a little tight range in this support block, so it's not very attractive. Litecoin dog shit, parabolically downward. Like if you actually try to connect these wicks downward, you end up like making a parabola. So yeah, it's probably the only chart that's worse than Bitcoin Cash. But the nice thing is, even though you do have liquidity hunts, you know, you have these bounces and stuff, they're not just like huge wicks. They're like legitimately people trying to pump. Maybe this was a liquidity hunt, but recently, you know, not really too much interaction with the EMA. Maybe you can get a pump up here or something and continue the fade. But for now, you just have this weekly resistance that you are currently retesting as resistance. So it will probably continue to die off as NFT craze continues and the rest of the markets pump. Seeing this kind of come off of you know, wildly oversold did nothing for it. Came off of wildly oversold practically into overbought and then continued dying. So I don't think the RSI really means too much to be close to oversold here. Maybe it bounces to the EMA or something again, and then just, you know, finds that resistance confluence and dies. It's not a good coin. It's not a good project. It doesn't really have a future. I don't know why it's still listed on half the exchanges that it's listed on. So that's it for today. That's everything we talked about. I would be interested in shorting Litecoin. I would be interested in shorting Bitcoin Cash. Not interested in playing Link here. Not interested in playing Uni here. Not interested in playing all-time break. I would be interested in buying spot Sol, but not in like playing it against ETH. Dot. Not going to play this here. Doge, not going to play it in block. XRP, get rid of this little like stray sperm cell real quick. Not too interested in playing this also in a block. BNB looks like shit. It's just channel down so far, so maybe if it posts a lower high and starts to turn again, I would be interested in shorting it, but I'm not interested in longing it unless it were to break this level, which is probably weeks and weeks away, at least 2 or 3 weeks away. So not immediately interested in playing anything here, although I would be interested in playing it in the future. And of course, ADA looks like it might be finding resistance here. I would be interested in playing this either long if it bounces off of this block, or short if it re-enters this block and shows signs of weakness.